Hello and welcome back to awtoolbox.com. I'm Glenn Keller, and in this video we are still investigating data. We've been working through different types of data, getting an overview of what we can see and interact with in the system. So far we've looked at visualization data, basic items and item revisions, data sets, and in this video we're going to take it a step further and we're going to take a look at some assembly data, some CAD data, associated to an assembly. An EBOM is specifically what we're looking at here. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started and see what we can see. In this system, we have some data. We have data provided by Sherpa Designs that has been provided so that we can navigate it and interact with it. So thanks to them and kudos. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to do a basic search, and then in the search I can see my data is all here. Now, if you're looking for an assembly, a lot of the times you'll have the top level ID and you can just put that into the field and open it up. But let's say that I'm looking for the top level assembly of the carriage, the bearing support here. So I know based on previous videos that I can come into the Where Used tab here and I can see that this is actually a part of this structure here. So I can expand this structure. I've got a nice little tree view and I can see where in that assembly it is. I'm going to go ahead and open it up, but I'm going to go all the way up to this level and open up the top level. So if I open up the top level, then I can see the whole assembly here and I can come in and see attachments at the top level of that. Now, on the left-hand side, I have the ability, I can see the tree of my assembly and I can expand each level of that tree. I can also select individual components of the tree and see the overview and attachments change to that component. In addition to that, we also have key properties in here that represent things like the occurrence, the element that we have selected, the release information about that object, etc. The table or tree layout, if you scroll left or right in this, will have things like your variant options, your effectivities, as well as your sequence or find numbers, and your release information, as well as custom attributes at the same time. Now, in this page, it works just like working with search results or your Explorer. You select on the left, it updates on the right. But because this is an assembly view, you have a lot of additional options that you wouldn't normally have. So in here, first of all, I can move this left or right as I need to give myself a little bit more room to work. And what we're going to do is really focus in on how to interact with the data up here in this toolbar. You can see it right here. What happens when we do that to the data underneath of it? And then how do we investigate the data by switching between things like 3D, details, and attachments. So in here, I have my assembly up and running. I can see that I have access to my data in here. I can see the properties that are in the list. Now I can, if I have permissions to the data, come up and choose Add, and add things like effectivities to the line selected, tiled elements to the line selected, siblings, which would be an additional line at the same level, substitutes or global alternates for purchasing. To be able to get those parts, I can edit the structure if I have permissions to it. I can search in the structure by clicking the find, and I can say find within this, and then I can do a search for something within that, and it will give me the search results. And if I select something, it will actually highlight that search result in the assembly, jump down to it, and then I can investigate information about it by going to the 3D tab or the details tab or what have you to kind of really look at what I have selected here. Now pay attention to some of the options you have. At the moment I have what's called transparency turned off. So in here, if I wanted to, I could say enable transparent selection mode. And then when it does that, I can see my one part that I have selected here is highlighted. So as I'm working with this, I can work pretty effectively. Just note that these little icons at the front of each assembly do turn on or off those components. So if I wanted to just have that component on, I could do that. So it's an assembly view as well as an individual component view. And then if I wanted the top level assembly, I can click it again and I can see everything turn back on. So adding components, editing the structure, finding elements, using the same type of search that we had except for searching within the scope of this assembly. We can also expand, packing or unpacking, collapsing and expanding below depending on what we have selected. We can compare different assemblies. So if I select this element, for instance, and then I control select this element, then I can come in here and say compare those two assemblies. And compare them, it gives me a nice comparison tool with a left and right, and I can see the differences kind of on the compare panel on the far right. And I can go through and see what all's different between the two and really analyze what is going on here. If I come in, I can see additional configuration settings, I can create new baselines, and so much more. Note that there's an exit compare across the top here. So in addition to that, you can also use export to Excel, where it dumps it out to Excel. You edit in Excel, you save and import it back in instead of using this interface. But I do like using this one. It does support a lot of the Excel functions that I'm used to. You can also run duplication functions against the assembly, as well as doing like selection mode, which is being able to toggle on checkboxes and working with multiple objects simultaneously. Notice, depending on what I select, the pages will change. In this case, I get a really nice comparison between the three selected objects. Finally, you do have a markup mode if you had the permissions and you wanted to change the assembly, you could do that. You could also edit, and if you have permissions against the data, you could edit it here, or you could do it in the details panel. So working with assemblies provides a lot of different use cases and functionality that you can interact with. You can make changes to the assemblies, all while going through a workflow or while you're interacting with working data that's kind of fresh in the system. As we dive into this further, we'll start playing around with different features in the visualization components, such as measuring tools or sectioning. We'll look at sending this workflow or this assembly through a duplication process and what options we get for duplicating data, expanding options, and so much more. So we hope you enjoyed this top level overview of kind of working with and looking at assemblies inside of Active Workspace, and stay tuned for more information on that topic.